Hello everyone, welcome to H Online Trainings and welcome to the SQL Training Class 4. So as part of this class, we will be seeing about two important keywords in SQL, that is called group by and having. So when to use group by and when to use having clauses. So we will see how to use it. So let's go back into our practicals. So now, so everyone open this table. So if you see this table, this has many columns here, and we have the annual turnover for each customer, what is the turnover, and which city he belongs to, and the country as well. So suppose if I want to see the annual turnover by each country, so I want to group this annual turnover data by each country. So I need to sum up the similar records. So when I take about the USA, there are the records like this. There are three records here. One, two, three. So I need to sum up each country wise. What is my total sum? So when you want to group this kind of data and do the aggregate level transformations, so basically we need to use the group by function. In the previous class, we already saw this, how to write the aggregate functions, as you see here. So in our previous class, we learned how to write these aggregate functions. Now, here we have not grouped this data as per any other subject. So we just try to simply show the sum, min, max, average, count for all the records, but we never have done any group by. So as part of this class, we will see how to group this data. Okay, as you see here, we have multiple columns. So let me write here, how do I, so I want to group this sum based on country. So I like a country column, and then I need to sum of this annual turnover. As always, try to give the alias name. Don't leave any column as it is. Select from and then customer details. Please note when you are writing, so you need to make sure that all the capital letters, when you are writing the sum, sorry, the keywords, you need to mention that in the capitalization letters. And please follow the formatting. And please follow this clear format while you are writing. This is more important note that everyone needs to do. Now, if you see here, I want to perform the sum based on the country. So I want to know what is the total turnover by each country level. So you need to write like this, but you need to remember one thing. When you use any kind of aggregate functions, either it may be sum, min, max, average, count, whatever it may be, and if there is any others column, okay, there is any other column which is non-aggregated. Okay. Right now, in this case, I have two columns. One, I have sum dipped up for all the turnover, and the second one, I have added as country. Now, I am trying to group this total turnover based on the each country level, right? So, whenever you may write this aggregate kind of functions, and if you are seeing any other column which is non-aggregate, then you need to include this in the group by clause. So you need to write the group by class, and you need to write this group by class after the table name. Okay. And you need to write like this. Okay. So how many, if I have two more columns here, and that is non-aggregate, you need to keep that many columns. So apart from your non-aggregating columns, so how many columns are there in the non-aggregate list? All those columns need to be appended to the group by class like this. Okay. Now, if you see here, now we are able to group all this data by each country base because we have one of the record which is doesn't have any kind of country and which is having null value. So basically, this is documenting under the null value. But if you try to group the data, you can simply try to group like this. And suppose if you want to write the max, you want to also identify the max value from each country as well. Max turnover from each country. So you can follow the same. So now if you see, both of these are aggregate functions. The only other column that I have is the country, and this is the only non-aggregating column, right? So I already kept that in the group by, so I'm not bothered with this. So you see here, we are getting the each top value for the respective country as well. So whichever is the maximum for each country that we are seeing here. So in this way, you can use the aggregate functions along with the group. Because here the concept is very simple. Whenever you write any aggregate functions inside the select class, and if you are trying to group any data, and if that is now having non-aggregate column, then make sure that you need to include that aggregate column here. Right now, let's go back to our main table. So basically, in this particular table, right now we have grouped it by country. I want to group this turnover by each country and then city level as well. If you see here, India has locations. So I want to group by India and then Delhi, and then India and then Bangalore, USA and New York. So if I want to group this by city as well, I need to include the city column like this. Okay. But if you go and try to execute this, you can see here the column customer details dot city is invalid in the select list because it is not contained in either an aggregate functions or the group by class. So basically, this error, whatever you are seeing, is rising because, as you see here, as I mentioned just before, so whatever the number of columns that you see that is not part of your aggregate, make sure that you need to append these columns. So I'm just so there are two columns which is non-aggregatable. So I'm making sure that it is part of your group by class. So now if you go and try to execute this, you can see it here by each country and then each city level, this annual turnover has been summed up. And you can get the max of annual turnover based on this combination. Okay. So in this way, you need to use this. You need to write the group by class. So it's the same way if you want to try for the count as well. Basically, we don't mention as a count of annual turnover because this is a number, but we just wanted to count the numbers as well. So I'm just taking this particular example here. Okay. So you can see how many number of values has been added up from each country turnover, right? So this is how you can use the aggregating functions and you can use the group by linking with this. Now in the previous class on the class whatever we have seen so far. So basically if you see here, we never has used any kind of aggregating functions. Suppose if I want to filter this data, okay, let's say I want to filter for only the country USA. I don't want for all the countries. Now what you can do here, you can simply write the where condition as it is, however you are writing previously. Here, country equal to USA. So you need to write, you can filter as it is, however you have practiced it so far. Now if you go and try to execute this particular statement, Now you can see the data only for the USA. Suppose I want to include the India as well. So equal to will not work here. You need to make it as a name, which we have already seen in the previous classes. So I'm mentioning it as India. If you see, I was able to filter the data only for the USA and then India as well. Right? So this is how you need to use the wait clause. Whatever the previous functions that we have seen, now all these functions in the previous classes, see, all these functions we have just used along with the select class. But we never has thought whether these functions can be used for the filtering as well. So now let's go and see, yes, just making a copy of this. Okay. This is my base data, right? So I want to group this. Now I want to get the annual turnover sum by each country level. I want to see the sum of annual turnover by each country level. If the year of date of birth is greater than after 1985. Okay. So I want to get the country wise total turnover for the customers whose date of birth is after 1985. It means I need to exclude this. Only one record we will be excluding because this is before 1985. So how we can do this? Okay. Now I need to filter the data, make sure that it is filtering the data only belongs to greater than 1985, right? So how we can do this? We have already seen the year function, the date extraction function just before in the previous class. Now I am passing that here and checking whether it is 1985. If it is greater than 1985 only, you try to display this. Okay. If you see here, if you want to simply check whether it is filtering or not, okay, I'm just putting the select star here. Okay, now I'll try to list here. If you see in this list, we don't see any number which is below 1985. So this all the results that whatever you are seeing is greater than 1985. So in this way, you can use the system functions for the filtering conditions as well. All the functions, whatever we have seen, it is not only to be used inside the select clause. You can also use this under the filtering conditions as well. Okay. So we'll try to include one more function as well from this. I also want to include one more condition like is active is one. I want to filter this data only for the active customers. As you see here, it is trying to filter only the active customers here. So this is how you can use the filtering conditions also inside your SQL query, and you can also use the functions as well in the filtering conditions. Okay. So now I'm going back to this the previous query. So I'm trying to remove this where condition. Now if you see here, So basically, we are trying to list by each country and then city what is my total turnover, and then we have easily grouped it. So let's remove these two just to simplify this query. So I'm just putting only because I have removed the city here. I'll remove the city from here as well. Now these are my total turnover by each country level. Right? The important point here is now if I want to filter this data. So previously we have used the row condition, where condition to filter the data row by row in the table. For each record, it will go and check and it will filter that data. After that, it will try to perform this operation. Now, if you look at this query, so it is already grouped your data by each country wise. Okay. Now, on top of this, if you want to apply any filter, okay, if you want to apply any filter, then you need to use the having class. Having. Okay, that having class need to be written after your group by statement. You try to mention the having and you mention it as a country, or not like this. So when you are using having, you will be filtering the data on top of the aggregated data. You are trying to filter the aggregated data. In those scenarios, you need to use the having class. Because we don't have the aggregated data here. Now, what I'm writing here, sum of annual turnover greater than, okay, let's put 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm trying to put to see whatever is the greater than. There are no records which is having greater than this number. So let's filter one more. Now, if you see here, this aggregated data, whatever you have seen, it is again filtered whose sum is greater than. So basically, what exactly it is trying to do? So it is trying to filter the countries whichever is having more than 500 millions. Okay. So in this way, you can use the having class to filter the data. The important point you need to note here, you need to identify the difference between the where and having. When to use where, when to use having. Now, where we will use when you want, when you need to filter record by record in the table. So if you want to filter the record table by each record wise, you need to validate the condition for each record and then you need to filter. So when you want to perform this row by row or record by record operations, then you need to filter the where condition. Use the where condition. And coming to the having, you need to use the having when you are working with the aggregated data. If you want to filter any data after, based on your aggregations, then you need to use the having class. If you are not using any aggregations, then use directly where filter the data. But if you are using aggregated data and you are trying to filter that aggregated data, then you need to use the having class. Here I am writing the aggregated data. So when you are trying to filter the aggregated data like this, you want to filter the whatever is the sum of this, then you can write like this. Now let's go back to this. If you see here, we have one record. You can see this and this. The first record and then record number 9 is almost a complete row duplicate. If you see all the columns, data in this particular table, the first row and this ninth row is exactly matching, right? Means it is having the complete row duplicates. Suppose in that case, if I want to identify the row duplicates, complete duplicates, how I need to write? We need to use the make use of the count function. We need to count the rows. How many rows are there are duplicates, right? So how we can count how many records are there duplicates and what are the details? Let's see here. Select star. Remember when you write the star means it is trying to refer all the columns. Okay, if you want to refer any single column like this, you need to mention the column name. Okay, by default, if you mention star means it will take each and everything. Anyway, I will try to mention this customer ID, customer rank, DOB, uh, sector, exactly, city, country, year established. I can mention here customer details. So we have mentioned all these columns. If you see this column, because this is an reserved keyword, it is showing in the pink color. So what I'm trying to share, you just place this square brackets. Okay, when you mention this as a square bracket, it will consider as a column instead of the keyword. Now remember one thing, whenever you are defining a column, suppose if there is an annual turnover, you need to make sure that it is continuous. Don't put space between these columns when you are creating the table. If you are putting these tables means, okay, if you have given this kind of spaces inside your table, then you need to put square brackets. Okay. So if any of your columns is having the gaps space like this, you need to use the square brackets. So far, I don't have any this kind of situations, so I'm fine with this. Only but this particular column, it is trying to show this as a keyword rather than the column. So I have just appended within the square brackets like this. Now I need to count how many rows are there, right? So I'm just putting one more comma here and coming to the next line. I'm writing it as count of star. I mentioned count of star. It is referring to all the columns whatever you have mentioned here. Okay, as record count. So I'm just trying to give an alias for this record count. If you see here, this is an aggregated function. This is an aggregator function, right? We just have seen this. Count is an aggregating function. Now, because I have used this aggregate function, and there are other columns as well, which is not participating in any aggregations. So now what you need to do, you need to make sure that these columns should be used by the group by. Okay. You need to mention all these columns in the group by. Otherwise, it will definitely not work. Okay, now let's go and execute. If you first want to see without any group by, just want to try to execute, I will see this kind of. You see this kind of is invalid in the select list because it is not contained in either. You can blindly see that there is some columns missing, whichever have been appended inside the select class. Those columns, either one of the column or maybe all the columns, is missing from the group by statement. So you need to make sure that all the columns, whatever is present under the select class, definitely should be under the group by class as well. So let's go and execute this now. If you see here, this first particular record is already had a duplicate and it is showing the record count as 2, right? So, but the rest of the columns is not having any duplicates, so it is considering none. By considering all the columns, so whatever the columns you are mentioning, it will take that combination and throughout the table it check for that combination. And if it is identifying any records with that combination, so it will keep on counting that records as 1 plus 1 plus 2. Okay? If it is not finding that combination means it will not count. Okay. So it will be, you need to write like this. Suppose if I want to filter, these records, whichever is having greater than 1. So I want to identify what are those duplicates. So 1 means definitely it is not repeated and you don't see any complete row duplicates. When you are seeing 2 means it is greater than 1, so it means it is having the duplicated values, right? Now if you want to identify this, now I can write the having here and then count of star. So what are the columns you are mentioning? I want to filter whichever is greater than 1, right? So I am writing like this. So let's go and execute here. If you see, it is filter, it is displaying only one record that is having the duplicates. So you can identify the duplicates by writing this kind of queries. Okay. So this is one of the important interviews. This is one of the questions that interviewers are asking. How can you find out the duplicate records in a table? And in continuation of this, we will see how to delete if there are duplicates inside a table. And we will see that in the next classes. Okay. So with this, I am trying to close this current session. So we have seen so far group by clauses and how to use the having clause as well. So I will be appending some of the exercises. You can refer to this video description for the exercises and make sure that you will practice all the questions which is given in the exercise. So thanks for watching the video. Have a nice day.